Hey guys, it's Mandy, and unfortunately the title of this video is not clickbait. I actually did just lose $5,000. I don't really know exactly what I would do differently if I could do it over again. There are some points at which I could have made a different decision and maybe the outcome would have been a little bit better, but I'm just really not sure what I should have done. I'll tell you the story and then you can tell me what you think or what you would have done. But I have to start way back from the beginning, otherwise you'll never understand why I was feeling the way that I was feeling in the situation. But back in the day, when I was like 2 years old, my parents hired a babysitter for me and my sister. And at first she was watching us at our personal house, but then she started watching other children there as well. And even though my parents had given her permission to do that, they didn't really like having, other people bring their kids over to our house and things like that. So my dad bought his first rental property. And this was way back, like 20 years ago or longer, back in the late 90s. And he bought the house specifically for her. He made sure that it had like a large den, like it had a living room and then like an extra large den area that he thought would be a good playroom for kids. And then he fenced in the backyard and added a playground, a little swing set and stuff. And so he bought the house so that she would have a place to babysit kids, basically, and so that she could continue to babysit my sister and I. And at the time, rent was about $450 a month, which equaled out to about the same price to watch two kids for a month. And so they just called it even. Basically, she didn't pay any rent, but my parents didn't pay any childcare. And it went on like that until eventually I went to school, and then I think she probably paid some rent, and then my sister went off to school, and then she started paying all of the rent, which is like $450 per month. Probably about 5 years after that, about 10 years after my dad first bought the house, she got married. And that's kind of when things started to go downhill. She started not paying very reliably each month. She would, make a payment here, make a payment there, but not really consistently. And it got even worse after she started having kids. And they ended up having a pretty large number of children. She actually has 6 of her own kids, and then they've adopted a child. So they have 7 kids in a 3-bedroom house, which is kind of a tight squeeze, I would imagine. And then at this point, you're probably wondering why my dad was putting up with them not paying their rent every month. And the thing is, my dad, he wasn't happy about it, of course. He would get aggravated and he would tell her, look, this is your last chance. You have to pay your rent every month from now on. I'll forgive all the past rent you owe, but you have to make your payments every month from now on. And they went through that a couple times, but it would just never went anywhere. She never took him seriously because he didn't mean it. He wasn't gonna evict her. We all knew that. And part of the reason for that is that, number one, she did used to babysit my sister and I, but not only that, we would spend the night at her house and she would do our nails and fix our hair and cook us whatever we wanted for dinner. So he just didn't have the heart to kick her out. But also all those kids. My dad is probably, he was probably one of little kids just love my dad. Like, he would, throw them up in the air, and I can remember the first thing my brother ever learned to say was 1, 2, 3, and my dad would throw him up in the air. And my dad was really soft-hearted towards people, and especially towards children. And there's no way he could have kicked 7 kids out, because we know that they don't have anywhere to go. This is a small town, and there's that. And then her family, they're some of the sweetest people you've ever met. Her parents are just very, very sweet people. They're missionaries, and they just give and give and give. And it's just a hard situation. So even though she was clearly taking advantage of my parents and the fact that they weren't evicting her, it would have affected so many other people that my dad just didn't have the heart to evict her, basically. So if you have watched my channel and my past videos, then you might know that my dad got sick a couple years ago. Basically, his heart just stopped without warning. He wasn't having any problems prior to that, and we really just don't know why it happened. Around this time, they basically just stopped paying rent altogether. I mean, I think maybe they paid like once or twice a year, but pretty much they just stopped paying. And really, we didn't care. That was like our last priority at that time. My dad was in pretty critical condition, so that's really all we were caring about. But once my dad got stable, and then I did start caring about the rental properties again and looking into, you know, how much she owed. At that point, it was like $9,000, which is close to 2 years of rent. And that's with my dad having forgiven several years of rent owed in the past. It was just clear that she wasn't going to start paying her rent, and either we needed to evict her or to do something else about it. So I talked to my mom about it, because our main concern at this point is we're in Arkansas, so it's perfectly fine to have someone live in a house and never do any upkeep to it. But I don't feel comfortable doing that. And with her not paying rent, I can't afford to do the upkeep to the house. And who knows when we'll ever get the house back. Like, I don't see them ever moving out of a house that they don't have to pay rent for. So I just didn't know what to do, you know? And I don't feel comfortable having them live there and me not doing any maintenance at all. Especially with there being 7 kids in the house. I don't want them living in a dangerous house, but I also don't want to have to upkeep it all the time. So my mom says, you know, why don't we just give them the house? And I'm like, no way. We're not giving them this house. If we're going to give somebody a house, it should be somebody who deserves it, somebody that's been paying. They've literally just been taking advantage of you because they don't even need the money. I see them go on vacations. They went on 2 vacations last year, guys. And so, and not like in-state, not like small vacations. One of them was to the beach and the other one was to Disney World. So, yeah. I'm like, no way, we are not giving them this house. Like, they could pay rent. They're just choosing not to. So my mom and I say, well, what can we do? Because we know we don't have the heart to evict them. So what can we do? And we decide, why don't we sell them the house for like super cheap, basically what they owe in rent, and surely she'll be motivated to pay. Like, surely she'll be motivated to pay if she gets to own the house in the end and the payment is less than the cost of rent. So mom and I say, why don't we sell it to them for $9,000? That's what they owe in rent. We'll do interest because we know, like, if there's no interest, why would they pay? So we do 6% interest, which is standard. That's what we normally do when we own or finance a house. And their payment comes out to be like $174 a month, $174 a month. They both have jobs. I know they can afford to pay $174 a month. And I call her and I say, look, can you pay this? If you can't, let me know. If you can only afford to pay $40 a month, let me know that, and we'll just do the length of the mortgage payment term longer. Like, if it takes 30 years for you to pay off the $9,000, fine, but you have to pay this every month. Like, this is the last chance. We've basically extended everything we can extend to you, and I cannot let you live here if you do not make this payment. So you let me know what you can pay. And she goes, oh, $174, that will work, that's fine, thank you so much, I'm so happy, like, thank you, I promise we'll pay it, I promise. So, here's something for you to learn from this. Never sell someone a house if they have not paid their rent on time. It has worked out fine for us to owner finance houses. It's worked out great, actually. We haven't had any problems owner financing houses two tenants who we have at least 2 years of them paying their rent on time. If you owner finance your rent to a great tenant that is taking care of the property, that's paying their rent on time, you should not have any problems. Like, you should be pretty safe. But if you do what we just did, which is not smart at all, and you owner finance a property to a tenant who has never paid rent on time, why would they all of a sudden start making payments on time? It makes no sense. We thought that they would be motivated to do it so that they could own the house for super cheap, because my dad, back in the 90s when he bought this house, he bought it for like $45,000, $46,000, and it's worth, even poor condition, 3-bedroom houses are going for $55,000. So for them to buy it for $9,000, it's giving them the house. I mean, they could resell it easily. So I thought that they would be motivated to make those payments, and I thought with it being such a low amount that they would do it. She made like the first 3 payments and then nothing else. Nothing else. I sent her letters, I've called her, I've texted her. She responds and she says, okay, I'll be in on Friday. She never shows up. I believe 6 months ago she wrote a check and it bounced. So that's the one time she tried to make a payment. And I mean, you know, it's not in your bank account. Like, it's illegal to write a check that bounces. I mean, so yeah. So at this point I'm mad, because I feel like we have given her every opportunity. And also, I watched them on the pictures on Facebook. I watched them go on 2 vacations. And Disney World, guys, I mean, that's not cheap. And so I wasn't feeling sorry for them. I was feeling like she was making her own choices, and I shouldn't be the one suffering for this. So I tried to tell her if she didn't get some effort made by the end of the year, then I was going to the attorney. And I said, this is the very last thing that I want to do, but you are forcing my hand. That's what I said to her. And she said, okay, I understand. I completely understand. I'll have it taken care of. The end of the year comes, I never hear from her again. We're halfway through January, and then I'm just mad. So I go to the attorney, I tell her, look, I want to foreclose on these people. I have tried to be nice and I just can't. Like, I've tried everything not to have to foreclose, but I need them out of the house. So I guess we have to do a foreclosure and then an eviction because I want them out. And so the attorney's like, okay, no problem. Oh, and here's where I have to explain a little bit too. We used to have a really great attorney, and unfortunately he passed away. So now I'm trying out the attorney that was recommended to me, and I explain everything to her. I explain that the house is in both of my parents' names. My dad has a severe brain injury and he cannot sign anything. My mom is his power of attorney. Here is the paperwork saying that. Here is the paperwork that our original attorney filed so that my mom could sell them the house, because it was also my dad's name and he couldn't sign anything to sell it. So we had to go to court basically so that my mom would be able to sell the house on her own. And here's that paperwork. Here's the paperwork for the mortgage from the title company. And I gave her everything she needed. And I told her, there were they had to basically uphold 3 things or we could repossess the house. And number 1 was they had to make the mortgage payment. Number 2, they had to pay the property taxes. And number 3, they had to provide proof that they had insurance on the house. And I told her they haven't done any of those 3 things. Their property taxes, they haven't paid since they bought the house. Nothing's been met. So we have grounds to foreclose on them from 3 different things. So at least, put the tax that they haven't paid the property taxes, because that's really easy to prove. We can just look it up on the assessor's website. Put that, in the paperwork so we have at least those 2 reasons. And she was like, oh yeah, of course. Basically, why would I even say that? This is her job and she knows what she's doing. So I wait I don't know, it's 2 weeks. And then she calls me and says the paperwork's done. And I say, okay, great, well, can I pick it up just so I can read through it? And then she gives me this thing about how it's an original copy and she doesn't really want me to pick it up. And I was like, okay, well, can you just make a copy of it and I'll pick up the copy? I'm telling her this. And she goes, yeah, okay, I guess I can do that. So I pick up the paperwork And there's a whole bunch of things wrong. She has my dad as being deceased, which I don't know if that's a big deal or not. I mean, he's not deceased. I gave her the power of attorney. I explained this to her. And I feel like she is an attorney and that their whole job is like to get the little details and the wording right. I mean, isn't that what they're supposed to be good at? And so I have to mark that wrong. And then the part that really bothers me, which I just made me feel like she's completely incompetent, I get to the part about the interest rate and how much they owe, and she's calculated the number that they owe wrong. And then the interest rate, she has it completely wrong. If you know anything about how mortgages work and how interest rates work, then it's compound interest. And they word it like per annum. So that's kind of, I'm not an expert, but that's basically a way to put like a monthly compounded interest into like a yearly term. So when I say that her interest rate was 6%, it's actually 6% per annum, which is not the same thing as 6% per year. But the attorney had it worded as she owes 6% per year in interest plus 0.05% per month or something, which is, that part was technically right. The per month, that was like what it would be, like the compound interest per month, it would work out to be like that much. But why would you say that? The 6% per year is completely wrong. If you're an attorney that knows what you're doing, and she's like middle-aged, she's been an attorney for years, she's probably in her 50s, I feel like this shouldn't be her first foreclosure. I feel like she should know what she's doing, and I'm by no means an expert, but I know that's wrong. Why would you even word it differently than the original contract stated? Why would you not just say interest calculated at 6% per annum? So I had to fix that, which just left me with very little confidence in her ability as an attorney. And there was another thing I had to fix, but I can't remember it. And I brought all the paperwork back to her office, and she wasn't in office. They said she would be out for a week and that they would fax it to her. And I was like, oh great, just have her call me and I'll, explain any questions that she has or whatever about the interest rate or whatever. And she never calls. About a week and a half later, I call the office again. She's still not in office and she still hasn't gotten to the paperwork. There were 3 things for her to change, and I literally wrote what needed to be changed. Fast forward to Friday, and it's been probably 3.5 weeks at this point since I re-gave the paperwork back to the attorney. Nothing's been signed because she hasn't corrected the paper, and we initially paid them $5,000, and that was what I was told it cost to foreclose on somebody and evict them, and that everything would be done for the $5,000 and all the filing fees and everything like that. So, okay, great. I expected it to be expensive. Friday comes along and the lady that we are evicting, her dad comes and talks to me. And he talks to me and he just says, wow, I didn't realize that the situation had gotten this bad. I didn't know she was taking such advantage of your family. I'm sorry that this happened. If you won't evict her, then I will make the payments. And I basically tell him, it's too late. We've already gone to the attorney. And he says, well, I understand. Don't worry, we're still gonna be friends. That's not my fault. Basically, he tells me he doesn't blame me, like he's sorry that she's treated us so badly, and he offers to help me fix up the house after I get them out of the house. And he also tells me, you just tell me what day that you want them out and I'll make sure they get out. And I'm like, well, no, you don't need to do anything. Like, I already paid the attorney, so don't worry about it. And he says, well, just let me know and I'll help you fix up the house. So he leaves and I feel miserable. This is a man that when my dad was in the nursing home, he would come and visit him. Like, I was there every single day, so I know who would come to visit. Not very many people, but this man would come and visit and talk to my dad, and my dad would be mean and grouchy, and he would be sweet, and I just feel horrible. I mean, he offered to help me fix up the house that I am kicking his daughter out of. So how do I go through with the foreclosure and the eviction? I mean, I just can't. I can't do it and sleep at night. And the other thing that I keep thinking and that keeps running through my head is that my whole town has been so generous to my family after my dad got sick. And I don't mean just like little bit of generosity. There are a few people who have just gone above and beyond and been so nice and so generous to my family. So how can we accept that generosity and then not be generous in return? And it's not the lady and the husband that I care about. I feel like they made their decisions and they could have easily paid for the house and they've just chosen not to. It's the people that it's going to affect and that their decisions are hurting, like her parents and her children. So I talked to my mom and we just decide, well, we'll tell the attorney to go ahead and stop. Hopefully we can recover some of that money we paid them back, and we'll basically just see what they can pay, and if they can't pay anything, then we'll just be prepared to give them the house. So at this point, I would like to at least recover the attorney fees, and I'm thinking, well, we should at least get some of the fees back from the attorney, like from the actual attorney. I know we won't get it all back, and probably half of it would be hopeful, but they haven't gone to court. We haven't even signed the paperwork, so I don't think they've filed anything, and they were supposed to do a foreclosure and an eviction, and they haven't even started the eviction, so surely we would get some back. Well, I went today to pick up the paperwork, and I got a letter that said basically that they had exhausted the $5,000 by all the time and hard work and research that they put into the case, and also the court filing fee of $165. So I'm pretty mad after I read that letter, because I feel like she put no research into that thing. She had so many details wrong. That's the third thing. She didn't even put into the paperwork that they hadn't paid the property taxes, which I specifically asked her to do, and she acted like, duh, why would I even tell her that? So that made me a little mad there, that she had treated me like I was stupid for saying it, and then she didn't even put it in the paperwork. And then I gave her all the documents, and I gave her the document like that my mom was my dad's power of attorney, and she didn't even read what I gave her, so how can she say like hours of research? And it had been 3.5 weeks since I returned the paperwork to her for her to correct, and she hadn't corrected anything. So where are all these hours of hard work and research? I don't know. And I don't know how it works. I tried to kind of look it up, but I couldn't figure it out. But would they have really already filed the court? Like, would they have already filed something with the court? Because they didn't serve the papers, we never signed them, nothing was ever completed. So why would there be a court filing fee already? I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe I just don't know how it works. But so I didn't say anything, because in the back of my head I kind of knew that this would be a reality. Like, I would have just felt better if they had said that the $5,000 was non-refundable, instead of saying that they put tons of hours of hard work into this when they clearly didn't, and they didn't even finish like half of what I was paying for. So I feel like we should have gotten some of that money back. But basically now I'm just hoping to recover the court cost from the family, and I feel so bad that it's her parents that have to pay, and she's doing this to them. It just makes me mad. I mean, she's an adult, and her parents are probably spending their savings to help her, and she's making poor choices with money. So her dad already wrote me a check this morning for $3,600, and that is getting us close to the $5,000 that I spent on the attorney uselessly. But basically the two things I learned is, do not own or finance a property to someone who hasn't paid their rent consistently. And number two, do not pay an attorney to foreclose on someone unless you are absolutely prepared to do it. So I do think that I'm not super soft-hearted. I do think that I could definitely foreclose if I needed to on somebody. I just don't have the heart to do it in this particular situation. but I do think if it came down to it, I could do it in the future. Let me know what you guys think. I know it's a long video and a crazy situation, but that's what happened. So see you on the next video. Bye guys.